What happens when the wrong person finally stands up to a bully? Imagine this. A girl named Shelby, always the center of attention, used to pushing everyone around and getting away with it. Whether it's cutting in line, belittling cashiers, or mocking strangers, Shelby thinks she's untouchable. But what happens when karma comes calling in the most unexpected way? This is the story of how one quiet man, minding his own business, became the one person Shelby couldn't push around. Today we're diving into a moment of justice, where rudeness meets its match, and the consequences of cruel behavior are served. Keep watching, because this one's going to make you think twice about how you treat others. Shelby is the kind of person who thinks the world revolves around her. She has a sense of entitlement that's hard to miss. She never hesitates to push others around to get what she wants. And if someone dares to get in her way, they're quickly met with her sharp tongue. Whether it's shoving people aside at the mall, cutting in front of strangers in line, or speaking down to cashiers, Shelby's behavior is a constant display of disrespect. But what makes her even worse is that she surrounds herself with people who never challenge her, her two best friends, Roslyn and Michelle. Instead of holding Shelby accountable, they laugh at her rude comments and egg her on, turning a blind eye to her growing arrogance. They're the kind of friends who just go along with whatever Shelby does, making excuses for her when she crosses the line. To them, Shelby's behavior is just a joke, a funny, rebellious act that they somehow find entertaining. But for everyone else around them, it's clear that this isn't just a harmless act. It's a pattern of cruelty, one that's about to meet its consequence. As Shelby and her friends walked through the busy halls of Westbrook Mall, it was clear to everyone around her that she owned the place, or at least, she thought she did. She shoved people out of her way, walking as if the crowd was nothing more than an obstacle course. If someone didn't move fast enough to her liking, she'd push past them without a second thought, barely acknowledging their existence. At the food court, she skipped the long lines, barging right up to the counter like she was the only one who mattered. When cashiers tried to give her any kind of direction, she'd snap at them, her tone dripping with disdain, as if their job was to serve her every whim without question. But it wasn't until she crossed paths with a woman and her toddler that things really took a turn. As they casually walked by, the woman trying to navigate the tight space, Shelby couldn't help but mutter loud enough for everyone to hear. Ugh, people can be so slow. The woman quickly shifted out of the way, but not fast enough to escape Shelby's sharp words. Roslyn and Michelle giggled behind her, but the people nearby exchanged uncomfortable glances. The air in the mall seemed to grow heavier with each step Shelby took, her reign of rudeness going unchecked. But little did she know, her obnoxious behavior was about to meet its match, and it was coming from the last person she'd ever expect. Craig was the kind of guy who preferred to keep to himself. Standing by a small food kiosk near the exit, he wore a brown hoodie and sunglasses, minding his own business, waiting patiently for his order. He wasn't fazed by the noise of the busy mall or the chaos around him. His calm demeanor made him seem like someone who had been through it all and didn't sweat the small stuff. He wasn't looking for trouble, but trouble seemed to find him the moment Shelby and her friends came into view. As they walked past, Shelby, with her usual sense of entitlement, bumped into Craig with a force that clearly wasn't accidental. She barely glanced at him as she muttered, "Watch where you're going." Craig didn't flinch or react, his face remaining unreadable. He simply turned his head slowly, his eyes cold behind his sunglasses, sizing up the situation without saying a word. But Shelby, never one to back down, took it as a challenge. Instead of apologizing or letting it go, she decided to escalate things, her arrogance kicking in. She stepped closer to Craig, her voice rising as she began to taunt him. "What's your problem? Don't just stand there like a statue," she sneered, pushing his buttons, expecting him to back off or get rattled. Craig stood there, calm as ever, not giving her the reaction she was hoping for. The tension in the air was palpable, and everyone around could sense it. Shelby had picked the wrong person to mess with. In a moment that left everyone around her holding their breath, Shelby, driven by her desire to dominate the situation, did something no one expected. Without warning, she raised her hand and slapped Craig hard across the face. The sharp crack of her palm against his skin echoed through the mall, causing a collective gasp from the crowd that had begun to gather. Rosalind and Michelle froze, their eyes wide with shock as they watched their friend take things to a whole new level. For a brief second, everything seemed to stop. Shelby stood there, her arms crossed, as if she had just won some kind of victory, waiting for Craig to react. But Craig didn't flinch. He didn't raise his voice or shout in anger. In fact, he didn't even blink. His face remained eerily calm, his expression still as serious as ever. The crowd was now on edge, watching in stunned silence, unsure of what would happen next. They'd expected a scene, maybe an argument, but Craig's stillness was unnerving, almost as if he was waiting for Shelby to realize the mistake she'd just made. It was as if, in that moment, he wasn't even concerned with what she had done. He was simply waiting for the right moment to show her just how out of her depth she truly was. The tension in the air was thick, and everyone could feel it. Something big was coming, and Shelby had no idea what was about to happen. Craig's response was as calm as it was decisive. Without a word, he slowly removed his sunglasses, his eyes locking onto Shelby's with a cold, steely gaze. The crowd held its breath, sensing that whatever happened next would change everything. Craig didn't rush. He didn't make a scene. He simply stepped forward with a quiet intensity that sent a ripple of nervous energy through the onlookers. In one smooth motion, he raised his fist, and before anyone could react, connected it to the side of Shelby's face. The punch landed with brutal force, sending Shelby flying backward. Her body hit the ground with a heavy thud, and for a moment, it was as if time itself had stopped. The entire mall went silent, stunned by the sheer speed and power of what they had just witnessed. Shelby's friends, Rosalind and Michelle, screamed in horror, rushing to her side in a panic, their faces pale with shock. They knelt beside her, not knowing whether to check if she was okay or confront Craig for what he had just done. But Craig didn't look back. He didn't care about the chaos unfolding around him. His expression remained unreadable, his posture unbothered, as he calmly put his sunglasses back on. With one last glance at the crowd, he turned and walked away, his steps measured and deliberate. The shock of his actions lingered in the air, and the people who had gathered around couldn't look away, unsure if what they had just witnessed was a moment of self-defense or something far more profound, a lesson that Shelby would never forget. As Shelby slowly came to, the first thing she felt was the intense pain radiating from her face, a sharp reminder of the blow she had just received. She groaned, disoriented, her vision blurry as she tried to sit up, but the weight of her own body kept her pinned to the cold, hard floor. The paramedics quickly moved in, their hands gentle but efficient as they checked her over, assessing the damage. For the first time in her life, Shelby didn't have an answer to her usual bravado. She couldn't snap back or belittle anyone. There was no more attitude, no more insults, just pain and confusion. As the paramedic gently wiped away the blood from her lip, Shelby's mind started to process the events that led her here. She had been the one who slapped a complete stranger, the one who thought she was untouchable, the one who believed there were no consequences to her actions. And now, here she was, lying on the floor, humiliated in front of a crowd that had witnessed it all. The realization hit her hard. The consequences of her actions had caught up with her in the most brutal way possible. Around her, the crowd began to disperse, but the whispers didn't stop. People were talking, sharing their version of what had happened. "She slapped him first," one person murmured. "That guy didn't do anything, but she pushed him too far." Another whispered, "Karma's a real thing, huh?" The words spread like wildfire, each person adding their own interpretation to the event. But one thing was clear to everyone. Shelby had met her match in Craig, and the justice served that day was something no one would soon forget. For the first time, Shelby wasn't the one in control, and the mall had witnessed the perfect example of what happens when you push someone too far. The lesson from today's story is simple, yet powerful. Karma comes when you least expect it, and every action has consequences. Shelby spent her day thinking she could push people around, believing she was above reproach. But in the blink of an eye, everything changed. The stranger she'd insulted and slapped wasn't just anyone, he was someone who wouldn't tolerate her behavior. And in that moment, the universe delivered a lesson she would never forget. What happened to Shelby is a stark reminder that our actions have a ripple effect. We might think we can get away with being rude, dismissive, or entitled, but sooner or later, it catches up to us. So, let this story be a reminder to us all. Treat others with respect, because you never know when your actions will come back to you. Reflect on how you treat those around you, and think twice before you speak or act in a way that might hurt someone else. We all have the power to change the energy we bring into the world. Let's make sure it's one of kindness, empathy, and respect, not one of arrogance or cruelty. If you enjoyed this story and the powerful lesson it brings, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this one. Every story we share has a message that encourages reflection, growth, and change, and we're so glad you're here to be a part of it. By subscribing, you'll stay updated on all our future videos that dive into real-life lessons, impactful stories, and the kind of content that makes you think. So, go ahead, tap that notification bell too, so you never miss a new upload. We're excited to keep sharing these moments with you and hope to inspire more conversations about the way we treat others and the world we want to create. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.